Around 1953, I think the diocese decided maybe that they needed to branch out and start some new missions. Back then, they thought big churches were not good. They liked them smaller. Oh, and this is my favorite noise. So anyway, they picked our Holy Trinity, and the vestry there decided it was a good idea. And so, and the rector there was John Mott at that time. So they put out the word in their congregation that there was this opportunity to start a new mission. And if anybody was interested, just sign up and we'll take it from there. My mother and I were members at that time. I was singing in the choir and she was working in the altar guild. So we got a group together and talked about what it would entail, what we would have to do and how long it would take and all this. Little did they know how long it would take. At that time, they had a curate, and I haven't heard that term since, but anyway, his name was Peter Robinson, and the idea was that he would be the priest in charge of the new mission. So with that, I will go on to the signing of the charter, which was in November of 1954. We were meeting at Irving Park School in their auditorium, and we had access to one of their small rooms off the auditorium. Bruce Rucker, who was one of their charter members, lived right across the street on Sunset, and she offered to keep the nursery in her room, in her house. So that took care of the unders, 3 and unders. I'll tell you later. The only requirement, aside from maybe associated with Holy Trinity, that you had to be baptized to sign the charter. So we got a few people from St. Andrews and people in the community who heard about the plan or the opportunity, thought that might be interesting. I might be interested in doing something like that. So that's how this motley crew got together. There was one family at Holy Trinity. The mother was Mabel Lucas, who at that time was head of Lucas Travel Agency, one of the first ones, if not the first one in Greensboro. She had at least three children who were also members of Holy Trinity, 2 sons and a daughter. So Ed Lucas said he would like to come. Mabel came, the mother, and Laurie Little, who was Lucas before she married Robert, decided they would come. And the second son, Jack, said, oh, well, Holly and I would like. And John Mott said, enough is enough. I have lost all my Lucases, and you all have to stay. So that's what happened. We came out really well. And Jack and Holly Lucas stayed at Holy Trinity, but they were big supporters here. So we did vote on took suggestions to what to name this motley crew. And it turned out that St. Francis and, I can't remember, St. Michael's and All Angels was the runner-up. So hold that thought for a while. And I did discover something I did not know, is that along in August, they eliminated the apostrophe in Francis. And boy, thank goodness for that. Can you think how about mess that would be? Anyway, let's see how I'm having to jump around because I don't want to forget something, but I don't want to bore you to death. But between November 54 and July 1955, Holy Trinity parishioners and all of us had signed the treaty, the charter, and with money from the diocese and Holy Trinity, bless the vestry's heart, and some of us who contributed as like a donation to a budget, we bought 3 1/4 acres on Lawndale Drive Extension. It was not a part of the city at that time. The city limits were about 3.5 miles away, and I'm thinking it must have been toward Cornwallis that the limits ran out. We paid $15,000 for this wonderful property. And we purchased a rectory, which was down the street here on another street. You could access it with a small road. It was walking distance, and a lot of people parked down there to walk here to church. All the financing for the building, the parish house, which is part of the current nave, was arranged, and Bishop Baker, who was the coadjutor at that time in the diocese, officiated in the groundbreaking, which was in August of 1955. At the time, a lot of people wonder why we wound up with this architecture. Well, it was the thing to do at that particular time, and if you've ever been around the diocese, you'll see some of these A-frames, and you know about what period we were built. But the idea was that it was could be multi-purpose with a parish house and easily added onto, which is obvious. We did a lot of that, and it was not expensive to build. So that's the little bit of background of why we have this interesting formation out here. In November of '55, Ed Lucas, our senior warden at the time, wrote a letter to the congregation. He said, well, look at what all we've accomplished. We've got a lot, a building, a rector, and a priest and a rectory. So now you need to think about the 1956 budget. So the vestry came up with this figure. $13,652 was the budget for 1956. And that included the salary of Peter Robinson, which was $4,500. Where's Milton? And it also, I went home, I thought, that figure's not right. Nobody could live on $4,500 with a, well, that also included a free rectory and the expenses to operate it. So it still sounds bad to me, but it's better than I thought. We had a janitor for $250 a year. A church school we ran on $300 a year. Office supplies that were $1,000. Mortgages are for two things, this building and the rectory, $3,700. I mean, $3,700, I beg your pardon. So the canvass results were 75 pledges and $14,446.40. So we raised about 1,000, a little less, more than we had budgeted. I tell you about the groundbreaking in 1955 in August. Let me see if I can find this figure that I want. Oh yeah, here it is. In 1955, we had 14 baptisms, hold that thought, 10 confirmations, and 2 weddings. Blake and I were married August 27th of 55. We were married at Holy Trinity Church because we were under construction here, big time after the groundbreaking. So, and the cornerstone was done in October, I think, with Bishop Penny officiating at that deal. So, I think I've told you all on that page that I wanted to tell you. The reason I say something about the 14 baptisms, this was the beginning of a big trend in this parish. We kept having children. And and then we had confirmations, and then we had teenagers. So we had a lot to plan for, and that's why we kept building these Sunday school rooms. And at one point, we decided that we would not make these additions two-story. We had several handicapped children and an adult or two who would have had difficulty navigating steps, and an elevator was too costly. So I think we did, with what we had, the property we had, we used it well without going to a two-story. However, in the planning along the way, we determined that we didn't want the choir up front. We wanted it in the back so it could lead and it would not be distracting. We would just hear the music. So that's how we wound up with the choir loft as we added on to the nave. And we also had, through the years, an assortment of organs. The first one was played by Mabel Lucas, the mother of these two kids we got, adults. It was a pump organ, and I can see her now to this day, and I'm 93 years old. We had metal folding chairs lining the aisle for seating, and up the aisle she would come on this pump deal, and it would creep along, you know. So I have a mental picture of her to that day. Well, sooner or later, I'm not sure how long after that, we realized this was not going to work. And somehow Peter Robinson found out that there was a used organ available. And he made a few phone calls, and for $4,000, we got a new used organ. And that lasted us until the one we have now, which required a big fundraising budget loan from the banks kind of deal, but we had, people contributed to it. And then we got this wonderful carillon, which I love, and that was a memorial, part of the cost of that. So I want to be sure I'm not forgetting something. Oh, and one thing I wanted to tell you, one of our members, early members, was Bill Kraft. He has a son named David. And when he had one or two children at that point, one snowy Sunday morning, we don't have those much anymore, do we? He put those kids on a sled and pulled them over here to church. I bet they still remember that, if nothing else. Well, I can't remember whether they had 7 children or 9 children eventually. But when they got to about 4 children, my mother said to Bill, "Why do you keep having so many children?" And he said, "Because we try to keep the grapefruit even." Well, I thought later, 7 and 9 did not keep the grapefruit even, so it came out right. But anyhow, that was one of my favorite stories from the old days. But if I don't leave any thought with you, this will be the next thing I say is the important one. Early on, within 5 years of this parish, we decided that we would forever try to give 55% of the budget donated to outreach. Now you think about that. And for a long time, we stuck to that by the book, and I don't know what we're doing now, but anyway, that was the thing that we felt we had been so blessed that we wanted to do something in return, something that we could help others, or something that needed to be done, not in the church, but out. So at one point we would help with St. Barnabas, which is another, and Church of the Holy Spirit. Some of our members left here and went to Holy Spirit. I remember that particularly. And one of our church secretaries, who was a member of Holy Trinity, went to St. Barnabas for a long time. So we did hold lots of fundraisers. We also had several controversies. And what church does not have that? One of them was over the Memorial Garden. And I remember the meeting we had in the parish hall, and the presentation was made and what we had to do and what it involved. And, you know, and all we were thinking about was a graveyard that you could put ashes in. And so one poor lady, who shall remain nameless, but I remember her well, said, "Who in the world would want to be cremated?" And this voice in the back of the hall said, "Well, you don't have to be cremated, but lots of us would like to be." So that settled that. And I'm sure there were some other people who also objected, but the majority wanted this to be undertaken. So we had good lawyers and good people who could fit, and we got permission from the diocese, I think. And we did all the paperwork, and that came about. There were some problems with the maintenance early on. And so we redesigned it so that it's more like it is now. And it has obviously grown, which is a good thing in a way, I guess. And now we have the wonderful columbarium, and I was glad to see that come about. We'd had a lot of, as I said, fundraisers, and we had a men's club, and then Mark showed me some film of one of the early, you could hardly tell where it was, but it was in the front yard before the Memorial Garden. And we did things to involve our neighbors in the community that was growing all around us. We got in the car and drove around, put leaflets in the mailboxes and told them all about the church and what time the services were, and the nursery was available, and we had a women's circle in the morning at St. Clair's and one at night at St. Elizabeth. So we did a lot of proselyting. Wanted to encourage them to come for a service and check us out. In a way, that was worded a little better than that, I guess. So I remember doing that on foot and in a car, driving around. Let me turn the page here, if you don't mind. I don't know the date of the first bake sale, but I remember where it was. Golden Gate Shopping Center. And I think the figure $600 sticks in my mind. But the good part about this was, for us, it was an undertaking that brought us fame and fortune. People still say to me, "When are you having the next book sale? Are you collecting books? I've got so many books I want to get." Well, of course, that's all changed, but I don't know what the book sale lasted, 25 years, maybe more, 50?
63, I think, but it's still going.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's still going.
Yeah. So that did a lot for this parish, because it was something we could all work on if we wanted to and had the time and could do. But it put us on the map, really, in a lot of ways. And the fact that people still remember tells you a lot. And it gave us an opportunity to do a lot of outreach, which is what we've been. Florence Melvin, who was the sister-in-law of a mayor at one time, started an herb forage festival. And what we did was we'd dry herbs and flowers, and we had some plants, and we put them all in the herbs in jars and sold them out here. And that was another little fundraiser we could do. It was fun and different, and we didn't do it for maybe 2 or 3 years, but that was good. And another one was St. Francis in the Kitchen, and that kind of got the community's attention, and that, again, put us on the map. So much so that we decided that we would do another cookbook, and we tried to think of another name, and we didn't like any of them. So it finally became St. Francis in the Kitchen again. It's one of these controversies I wanted to go back to. And that was a revision of the 1920 prayer book. And as you can imagine, some of these old people, we weren't too thrilled about that, messing with their Bible. So we everybody had a green book in the pews, and we were supposed to look at it and see what we thought about these, and what we suggest. We looked at the hymnals, and they took out hymns that we loved and all that. So, but we survived, and it did get us to sort of do some soul searching and thinking about the prayer book and how it's used and what it meant to each of us. So one thing I do remember we learned about was Rogation Sunday. And it was in May, usually about 3 days before Ascension and the time of planting. And so it was a prayer time for a successful harvest. And what it involved here was an outside adventure. We walked around the church, and I do mean around, Then we went up Lawndale to Episcopal Church and turned around and came back. So you can imagine what the people driving by and the neighbors thought, what in the world are they up to this time? So I don't think I've ever heard of it since. We may have done it one more time, but after that, it went by the boards. But let me see if I've got one more. Oh, one of the biggie controversies was a woman in Durham was elected to the vestry. Think about that. So, of course, St. Francis got right on the deal and decided that that was something we could do, and the vestry went along with it. And so without the first time we had women on the ballot, we elected a female vestry person. So after that, it was no problem, as you can tell. Let me see if I want to say any more about that. But that was in the early 70s, 1970s. And we did survive, as you can tell, and we eventually wound up with a senior warden, female, which was nice. To say a little bit about the day school, you can kind of imagine how it progressed, looking around at these wing additions that we made. But it began in a small house that was probably out right where the courtyard is. And it obviously, we had to tear it down, not move it, but store it down. I don't know what happened to it. So we had another building over here that was already on the property. And so the name of this little house was St. Michael's. And so when we eliminated that St. Michael's, we gave the name to this little house behind us. And that's where the name St. Mike's originated. But the original little kindergarten wasn't even that. It was for like 3-year-olds. And we met 2 mornings a week or something. And then as we got to these extra rooms, we had decided we would start a day school, which, as you can well know, is a howling success and meant a lot to the community and was another opportunity for outreach for us. And it's still going well today, which is, I feel like another thing we undertook was the current kneelers that you have used every Sunday. A woman here in town, her name was Avis Gallagher, was a well-known needlepoint designer. And she was a member of one of the Roman Catholic churches here, and she agreed to design. We helped put symbol suggestions for her. She designed them and decided on the colors and everything. And the needlers are divided, I think, in 8 pieces. Is that right, Alder Guild Lady? Yeah. So we divided we had 8 groups of women and maybe some men. I'm not sure about that. There's no men in my group, but there might have been in other ones. And we decided that we would have the people who volunteered to have one kneeler in their home so we could leave I'm getting ahead of myself. So we had 8 groups in homes, and Roland Jones was the rector at that point. And he did a lot of woodworking, and he designed 8 frames and the supports under them so that they could stay up all the time in the people's homes. And we met once a week at least, and other times if you wanted to drop in and it was convenient, and worked on those things. Each dealer is signed underneath by the women and people, men maybe, who worked on them and the date they were finished. And so that's where we got those. And they held up pretty well. We did have to have them restuffed one time. I remember taking them to Asheville to some lady who we found out would do that for us. And they're now a lot thicker than they used to be, which is better. Let me see what else I want to have the neighbors. I apologize for having to read, but I was afraid I would forget some. One time we had another time, I should say, we had a fundraiser out in the parking lot. And why in the world we got by with that, I will never know with weather conditions. But we took everything you can think of. This was one of those clothes, furniture, appliances, whatever people would donate or wanted to get rid of. And it was a big success and a lot of fun. And again, another outreach opportunity for the community and for us to make some money. If any of you came to Don Darnell's funeral, you heard his daughter, we called her Sally, I think she is now Sarah. She is also a clergywoman, I guess you knew that. She was in charge of this parking lot deal, and it was a lot of fun, and she worked hard and she loved every minute of it. So she was. One thing I know some of you remember, and it was one of the best things in the outreach department that we did, and that was to adopt, literally almost, a group of family Montagnards from Vietnam. And from the time of the balloons and whatever at the airport to welcome them here, we were able to involve them in our parish life. We had arranged housing, furniture, food, clothing, jobs, transportation, and tutoring for the kids in school. This was a marvelous project. Anybody could do something. You know, if you brought them a toothbrush, that was something. I mean, they had nothing when they came here. And getting them a job, I remember their first jobs were in a poultry factory in Siler City or something. I mean, it was awful. I mean, knee-deep water was part of the deal, and we couldn't wait to get them another job that was somewhere close by, and we could get them a car. What I want to say in sort of a conclusion is that in about 1974, Peter Robinson decided that after 20 years, it was time for him to move on. he felt that we needed a change and a new leadership style. And although his departure was a real blow, we had been through a lot with him, as you can imagine. He had married me, baptized my 3 children. So, you know, everybody had that kind of experience. Maybe not the wedding, but so we formed a search committee, and we may have had an interim, I don't remember that. I think probably we did, because the bishop realized it was going to be a traumatic experience for us. But we did all the dirty work we had to do, fill out forms, and what we would like to see in this new person that was coming, and the personality and his experiences with other parishes, and what his skills might be, and what our goals would be that we wanted to see if he or she fit into the. So that's when Roland came, Roland Jones, and he's the one who built the frames for the kneelers. And a lot of other things around here that needed fixing. He was really good at doing that, among many other things. I'm just jumping to the last clergyman that I was supposed to talk about, and that is Fred Warnicki. How many of you remember him? He is still alive. He is at Friends Homes, Guilford, where I live, and Gail is still in independent living. He is in skilled nursing and not in too good shape, but still okay. And also, one of our choir members, Walker Weigel, some of you may remember her. She has Parkinson's disease, and she is now down the hall from Fred. So I just throw that in case some of you wonder where he is. I should also add that when I think about the first vestry, our first vestry, I'm amazed at the talent and dedication that those men gave us. They gave up a lot to leave Holy Trinity. Some of them went back to Holy Trinity 20, 25 years later, but we had their wisdom all that time. But when you think about what they had to do, the decisions they had to make, so it should come as no surprise that one of those vestry members became a mayor of Greensboro, and that was David Shank. So we did have a lot of talent. We were lucky, and I am, and still to this day, am very grateful to the vestry at Holy Trinity and those parishioners who came here, and we are indebted to them forever. And they have always been interested in us since then, you know. So I think I've covered enough right now, but please ask me some questions if you want to know who was or who did or what happened or why did we do this, or if I haven't overstayed my time for lunch to go.
So when we first built the church, there was no choir off in the back?
I think we sat in the back, but there was no loft. No, that came, you know, several expansions, and, you know, we had to kind of push it out toward the street to get the choir loft, and then back to get the steps, and, you know. We had, in the beginning, we had just this room, maybe a couple of offices and a couple of Sunday school rooms. We had a kitchen, and which also was the sacristy at one point because they had running water, and, you know, it made it simpler to get to. I had that in my notes. I just forgot to mention it. I'm glad you asked. Thank you.
What are you most proud of? If you had to say, St. Francis to me is this, what would that be?
Well, multifaceted statement. I was going to say that two of the things that I thought we were best known for as far as our community relations would be the book sale and the day school.
Right.
I'm amazed at when I think about the meager beginning, really, how much we have grown, and each rector, and oftentimes, I just thought of something. Some of the assistants have made a real impact. And I think of, let me tell you two things, if I may. When Ted Voorhees was one of our assistants here, there was a group called Yuccamuds. Don't ask me what it meant, but it was a group of young couples, mostly, maybe some single people. And they had more fun, and they enlivened this parish. Not that we needed it, but it was a really good opportunity for a large group of our parish at that point. We did the pageants like you still do with Christmas and all that. At one point, the three magi were male choir members who just did those parts. It's changed a lot. One year, I didn't know this until later. When Jack Jessup was here as an assistant, he was in charge of the pageant, of course. That's what assistants did at that point. One of the many things they did. And my daughter, who was quite tall for her age and taller than lots of the boys, was Joseph. And I didn't think anything about it, and I don't think she did. And Jack didn't realize it until he found out about it right as they went down. And he was furious. He said, "That is the worst thing I can think of, insulting a young woman like that." So the next year, she was Mary. And I don't think it blighted my daughter's life at all. But I just think of things like that. Well, anyway, what else do you want to ask me? I'm looking for a statistic that I might.
No, so St. Francis began as a mission
Yes,
church. How long was it before you got?
that's what
parish?
I did mention that, but maybe I didn't make it clear.
Okay.
It was from 1974 to 1955. Think about that. It was a year and a half. That's what I should have, what I meant 56 and 50. So let me find that place. I'm glad that's one of them I was afraid of. Oh, here it is, right here. In May of 1956, at the Diocesan Convention, St. Francis was unanimously approved as a parish, no longer a mission. Word around the diocese was that we had set a record for the shortest amount of time it took to move from a mission to a parish. So thank you for asking that. And so that was May 1956, we became a parish. And that shortly thereafter is when we made the decision for the 5% budget item for outreach. Y'all keep asking me questions, and maybe I'll think of one other thing that flashed through my mind, and now I've forgotten what it was.
So when your family decided to become a part of the mission, was it a hard transition for your family to make the decision to go from
Not
Holy
really.
Trinity?
Really, the only members of our family were there. I was not married at that point. And my mother thought, well, that's something we could do. And I liked it. So little did I know, you know. But what else? I didn't really answer your question.
You did.
My husband was a son of a Presbyterian minister, and he went to First Presbyterian Church. And we took turns going to church. He would go down there, and I would come out here when we had children, you know. And even when we didn't, he did that. And so finally, one day, he went in and talked to Dr. Redhead, who was the minister, and big-time minister at that church. And he said, well, Blake, Nancy is really interested in this parish, and it has meant a lot to her and her mother. And so why don't you think about joining that church? And he did, which was, I mean, he still was a Presbyterian at heart, I think, but he became a big booster here. And and of course, all our children were baptized here, buried here, all that stuff. So, anything else you want? I'm sorry that I've jumped around a little bit, but I'm trying to see if there's anything really crucial that I've left out that I wanted to say. And you all prompted me a couple of times, so.
Nancy, thank you for sharing. This is something we wanted to do for a long time. Or this is something I wanted to do, and I co-opted some other people to make it happen. But thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing this. I cannot imagine there's any way we could celebrate our anniversary of 70 years without having a record of your narrative of what this church is, who this church is, and why we are the church we are today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I will say to my daughter, and I've discussed things that I should and should not say. So don't make it personal. But I think I should say that I was the first female vestry member.
And so thank you for that. And with that, lunch is here.
Good.
Ready.
No,
And again, oh God, we thank you for the gift of this day, for this community of faith we love and call St. Francis, and for these 70 years, for the work that we've done to make this city, by your grace, this county, what it is, the gifts you have given us and the gifts we have shared. Now, in this moment, bless the food we're about to receive and keep us continuously mindful of those who are in need. Through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen.